Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into something super fascinating today, and honestly, maybe a little bit of a wake-up call about our daily routines. We're always obsessing over our physical health, right? What we're eating to stay fit, how much we're working out to build muscle, but how often do we actually stop and evaluate our habits specifically for our cognitive health? Our brains are literally the control centers for everything we do. Yet without even realizing it, so many of us are engaging in daily behaviors that might actually just be wearing them down. So, I've got to ask you right up front, are you unknowingly committing any of the 8 daily behaviors that could be harming your brain? We all kind of just go through our days on autopilot, but what if I told you there are exactly 8 incredibly common habits quietly doing damage? Seriously, think about your morning routine, your commute, your workday, and your evenings. You might actually be pretty surprised at what makes this list. All right, let's get right into it. We're looking at a breakdown that maps out these 8 common yet destructive habits directly onto the 2 hemispheres of the brain. The key triggers here are really striking. Things like the dark, negative news, isolation, full volume, sleeping issues, sugar, screens, and not moving enough. These aren't just, abstract scientific concepts. These are tangible, everyday actions. Our whole goal today is to unpack each of these triggers and figure out exactly what we're putting our minds through day in and day out. So here's our quick roadmap for the explainer today. First, the 8 brain-damaging habits. 2, our physical foundations. 3, the toll of modern technology. 4, environment and social isolation. And finally, rethinking your daily routine. Section 1, the 8 brain-damaging habits. The big picture. Okay, here's the full rundown of those 8 habits. Staying in the dark too much, consuming way too much negative news, social isolation, blasting your headphones on full volume, poor sleeping habits, consuming too much sugar, too much screen time, and finally, barely moving throughout the day. I bet as I read through that list, at least 1 or 2, maybe even 3 or 4, made you wince a little bit, right? That is totally normal, and it's exactly why we're digging into this today. Section 2, physical foundations and baseline physical needs. One distinctly damaging but honestly super overlooked habit is physical stagnation, just barely moving throughout the day. In our modern world, it's so incredibly easy to go from sitting in your car to sitting at a desk to crashing on the couch. But here's the thing, our brains absolutely thrive on blood flow and oxygen, and those are driven by movement. When you barely move, you're literally depriving your brain of the exact fuel it needs to operate at its highest capacity. And movement isn't the only foundation we tend to neglect. Think about how poor sleeping habits and consuming too much sugar interact. Let's say you get a terrible night's sleep. How do you compensate the next day? You probably reach for a sugary snack or one of those massive sweetened coffees just to stay awake, right? Both of these are explicitly called out in our source material as brain damaging. Poor sleep stops your brain from recovering and clearing out toxins, and then a high-sugar diet spikes your system, which just leads to an inevitable crash. Put them together, and you've got a perfect storm of physical neglect for your cognitive health. But let's be real for a second. Why are we so often sitting still, losing sleep, or just feeling totally drained? Well, I want you to ask yourself, how much is your phone, or maybe your computer, to blame here? That naturally brings us to our next major category of habits. Section 3, the toll of modern technology and digital device impact. We have all done this. You're at the gym, or you're just trying to block out the noise of a crazy commute, so you crank the volume all the way up to max. But blasting your headphones on full volume is a truly destructive habit. I mean, this is pure sensory overload. We're aggressively bombarding our auditory processing centers. And over time, that doesn't just damage the physical structures of your ear, it stresses the brain out, forcing it to constantly process sound at this painfully high intensity. You really got to give your ears and your brain a break. And right alongside that audio overload is the visual equivalent, too much screen time. Seriously, take a second and reflect on your own daily screen usage right now. Between your phone, your computer monitor at work, the tablet you read on, and the TV you watch at night, how many hours are you just bathed in that artificial glow? The source material makes it super clear that this sheer volume of screen time directly damages the brain. It taxes our focus, it strains our eyes, and it keeps our minds locked in this state of perpetual superficial processing. Section 4, environment and social isolation, looking at our surroundings and connection.
You might not realize it, but the environment you put yourself in heavily dictates how your brain functions. A really specific, subtle habit here is staying in the dark too much. Think about folks who wake up, keep the heavy curtains drawn, work in a dimly lit room all day, and barely step out into the sun. Natural light is a crucial signal for our brain's internal clock. When we just hide out in the dark, we confuse those natural rhythms. That can lead straight to brain fog, fatigue, and a total disruption of our natural cognitive cadence.
And honestly, what are we usually doing while sitting around in that dark room? Consuming way too much negative news. Notice the emphasis on the word negative there. It's not about staying informed, it's about the constant, unyielding stream of disaster, crisis, and stress that we ingest. Doom scrolling takes a massive mental toll. It keeps the brain in a state of high alert and chronic stress. And we know for sure that being in that state is fundamentally damaging over time. So here's the really crucial point. When we combine staying in the dark with obsessing over negative news, it almost inevitably leads to social isolation. And humans, we are fundamentally social creatures. Our brains actually evolved to interact, to empathize, and to communicate with each other. When we cut ourselves off and retreat into total isolation, we're essentially starving our brains of the complex emotional and social stimulation they absolutely require to stay healthy and vibrant. It's a deep emotional impact that physically affects our cognitive health.
Section 5, Rethinking Your Daily Routine, where we put it all together.
When you look back at all 8 of these habits, it really illustrates the whole concept brilliantly. They are all so deeply interconnected. On one side of things, we've got the environmental and emotional factors, staying in the dark, negative news, social isolation, and blasting those headphones. On the flip side, we have the physical and technological neglects, poor sleep, too much sugar, excessive screen time, and a lack of movement. Think about it. If you're barely moving, you probably won't sleep well. If you don't sleep well, you might eat more sugar and maybe isolate yourself. Understanding this giant web of habits is exactly why this matters so much for you and your long-term cognitive health.
We've broken it all down, we understand the web, and we know exactly what the dangers are. So I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to chew on. Look at your life today. Which of these 8 habits are you going to break first? Look, you don't have to change your entire life overnight. But picking just one of these to improve, that could make an absolute world of difference for your mind. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning those daily routines, and I'll see you next time.